Hello, and welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I'm Charlie Paparelli. You know, if you don't want to miss one of these episodes, we publish every Friday. Just go to paparelli.com and put in your email, and you'll never miss an episode. This is also published on podcasts every Friday under Paparelli Podcast. You know, I am Charlie Paparelli, and I'm a 25-year angel investor. And during that time, I have met hundreds of entrepreneurs who have taught me how to start companies and grow companies into very valuable properties that actually serve their constituencies really well. And our topic today is from entrepreneur to serving the homeless, an unlikely path. And my guest today is Chip Patterson. Chip is the founder of 3P Partners. He is one of those really quiet entrepreneurs. You don't hear about Chip, but when you meet Chip, you're just kind of overwhelmed, as was I. He's quiet, he's humble, but he's very successful. He also, what really struck me and why I invited him on this show, is he really has the heart of a servant. So Chip, welcome. I'm glad that you're able to join us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you. How did we, Chip? How did you get my name? How did we meet?
So, Larry Powell introduced us, and Larry's a good friend of mine, and I'm in a monthly group with him where we get together and just talk about all sorts of things. But he was describing you to me. I told him I was looking for mentors for our Georgia Works program, and he said, "You got to call Charlie." So,
right. Georgia Works. Tell me about Georgia. What is Georgia Works?
Georgia Works is our program based down in Atlanta. It's at the Gateway Center in Atlanta, and it's our it's a homeless back to work program, and so we've been in there about 6 years now.
I got it. This now, when you say you're in this group with Larry, Larry was a former private equity investor, had his own private equity firm, and did really well. And he's a good friend of mine. I guess you guys met at Atlanta Country Club?
We did meet at Atlanta Country Club. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So this group that you guys pulled together, can you tell me just a little bit about it?
Sure. I think the group existed before I was in it, but it's Larry and a few other guys. Ron Blue is in it, and Rick Jackson and Dave Allman, Rick DeMoss, Jack Alexander, Darren DeVore, and they invited me to come to the group, and I've been joining them every month when available for the last probably 4 years now, and I don't say much because
I was going to say, that's kind of a who's who.
It is a who's who
in Atlanta.
It's very intimidating, and I just kind of sit and try to take it all in. I'm lucky to be there.
This is the guy that created Jackson Healthcare. This is the guy that created the Sovereigns building and a lot of real estate, big projects here, commercial real estate projects around town. How did you get in the group? You must be one of the better golfers at Atlanta Country Club.
I have no idea, because I don't think any of us are good golfers in the group. I think it was just like-minded people that, were trying to serve and support each other and kind of going through some of the same things. And it's nice to have that.
Was its purpose to be a Bible study?
Well, they don't really call it a Bible study, although that is part of it. A lot of times it ends up, talking about politics, and, it's talking about our families and having grandkids, and I don't have any of those yet. So, but, just kind of how you handle generational wealth, and how are you going to, leave your legacy, leave the world better than, when you got here. So it's kind of just us all around support group.
Yeah, I'm involved in a group, something like that too. It's a sort of a dinner group, and of like-minded guys. We're all born again Christians, but it's a small group, as yours is a small group. And the idea is to just stay in each other's lives. It's so easy these days to become isolated, or to have a golf game where you just talking about baseball or whatever it is, or what's going on in current events. But, how do you apply this network that we've developed lifelong, to really helping others and serving others? So
Right.
it sounds like you're doing the same thing over there.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's pretty good. So so to get into this group, first of all, to get into Atlantic Country Club, you had to have done pretty well. And you told me that there were some pretty humble beginnings that you had. Tell me how you tripped into becoming sort of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So, it's been a while. It was 1986. So I'm going to try to remember.
Look at me, man. I started back in 1977. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
all right. You got me.
I got you on that one.
So,
1986, what was going on with you?
I graduated high school in 1985. I thought I was going to be a football star. I went to Georgia Southern to play football.
Okay.
Found out I wasn't that great at football compared to the other ones. But that second semester, my father actually got sick. He got lung cancer. And they gave him 6 months to live, and I just came home to be with him for his last 6 months. And and he lived about 6 months. They were dead on.
Wow.
And I started parking cars.
You were born and raised in Atlanta?
I was in Marietta, Georgia. Yeah.
Okay. So, what'd your dad do?
He's a blue collar guy. He was a salesman for a chemical company. We grew up in Michigan and the auto industry, and he was into chemicals that were related to automobiles and steel and stuff. So he, it was my father and mother both didn't go to college. We grew up in a blue collar family, and we scraped by. And
so you were going to make your mark being a professional football player, huh?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
What high school did you go to in Atlanta?
I went to Lassiter High School.
Oh, okay, great.
First year they opened, and but that
was that tough coming back for you? Was that a big decision to come back when your dad was dying?
Yeah,
from
that was tough. It was really tough. It kind of changed the course of my life completely. I thought, still thought I was going to be a football player, but I wanted to be with him. I ended up enrolling at Georgia State and got a job at Exxon and started pumping gas and working in their garage. And then I heard about valet parking that down in Atlanta, that maybe there was a few valet parking jobs. I can't remember where I figured it out, but I got hired to be a valet parking attendant at a restaurant called Otto's.
Okay.
Next to Peachtree Cafe, and it was kind of in that Buckhead area right when it was starting. And
this was 1986?
86. So
okay.
Almost 1 year. So I switched to parking cars, and the owner of Otto's, George Roaring, offered to lease me the parking lot instead of just paying a wage, and said we could charge $2 a car and I'll lease you the parking lot. I think I paid $500 a month for the parking lot, and I started a company just like that. And I was.
How long were you parking cars before the owner of Otto's came to you and offered you that deal?
I always think about it. I think it was a couple months, probably 2 or 3 months.
That's it.
And
he just had, why did he offer you this deal? What was it because he just didn't want to deal with all you car jockeys kind of
exactly right. He wanted it off his plate, like just hang me and you can handle it. And so a business was started. I didn't even know it.
How did you get to that deal?
It was offered to me, so I didn't even know what a lease was. I didn't know. I had to go get a dictionary.
When he offered you that, what were your thoughts? Do you remember back then what you were thinking? Because you were just. How much were you making, by the way? You were parking cars. Do you remember what you used to think a good night was?
Yeah, so I added it up. So when I was pumping gas, I made $3.85 an hour.
Okay.
So I would work 2 weeks, and I'd get a paycheck for about $125 for 2 weeks work. And then my first year of parking cars, I made $50,000, right at $50,000. I was making about $1,000 a week, and I would work 7 nights a week. I would work every single night, and and park cars, and
So this is sort of like a 5 to 12 kind of a deal?
Yeah,
5
it
p.m.
was
to 12
it
a.m.?
was probably like a 5 to 3 in the morning type of deal.
Oh, okay. So it was
Yeah.
a 10-hour work day,
I
parking
would
cars. And even
down, I
right
would do
from the
my homework
beginning,
in
you
my
were making
car,
like $1,000 a week?
$1,000 a week. And,
So when the owner of Otto comes to you and he says, look, I'll lease you the parking lot for $500 a month, the economics were like a no-brainer.
yeah, it was fantastic.
So what kind of calculation did you do, when you said, yeah, sure, I'll do that? What came to mind? I mean, how did you I mean, these are kind of simple things, but I mean, this is what people kind of go through, right? So I'm an employee and I'm making tips.
Right. I don't think there was a feasibility study. I just said yes. I knew I was going to make more than 500 a month immediately. And just the thought of, owning my own business was a great, just fantastic. I never thought in a million years I'd own my own business. And,
How old were you at the time? 1986?
I was 18 years old.
18 years old.
Yeah, 18.
So you're parking cars, you're going to Georgia State, and now you got a lease that you owe a guy $500 a month for this parking lot at this restaurant in Buckhead. And now all of these other car jockeys, these other guys parking cars, now they're yours?
Well, this was just one little parking lot when how it started. So I just was me, and I worked.
I see. Okay.
Didn't hire anybody. I just worked it myself. But then about a few months after I started that, he was opening another restaurant down the street and said, "Hey, there's another parking lot. I'll lease it to you for, I think it was $1,600 a month. It was a bigger parking lot." And then I had to hire somebody. So then I found one of my close friends and said, "Hey, how about coming to work for me as a parking attendant?" And
what was the deal you gave him?
I think it was just keep your tips, I think is how we worked it out. I'm trying to remember, I think that's all it was.
Well, if he kept all the tips, was there a charge to park the car?
It was $2 to park.
Okay.
But most people would give us $5 or $4 or $3, so there was always, so I would say, give me the $2 a car and you keep everything above it. And
how did you know that he was giving you weren't there because you were still at the Otto's restaurant.
Right.
How did you know that he wasn't taking you on the $2 a car?
He was taking me. They were all taking me.
Yeah. Well, it's a cash business. You never know, right?
It's a cash business with no cash register. That's my saying.
So how did you work that out? That's one of those learnings, right?
That was a learning. So, you could always, we'd have parking tickets and you could issue them in and issue them out, but you can reuse them. There's a million ways to get around it. So I would just start setting sales quotas in a way. I didn't call them that, but in my mind, I would turn around and say, why don't I just release this lot to him? So for a night, I want $100 and you can keep everything above it. So I would just start setting what I called lot fees. So
that's a good idea. So then you didn't have to worry about, first of all, you weren't worried about optimizing then,
right.
And you just said, I'll take this level and never have to worry about if this guy's ripping me off or not.
That's right. Just give me $100 for Monday night. You keep everything else. So I do a daily lease basically to these guys. And then when I had my third lot and fourth lot and fifth, it just kept growing.
Though, on those guys, did they ever get to a situation where they said, I didn't even make $100 a night?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And then I would say, I'll tell you what, I'll work that shift next week and see how it does myself. And so we would just switch lots, and then I would call that an audit. So I'll just come audit the lot and see how it does for myself, and lo and behold, it did great the night I worked. So I'll just get somebody else.
And that's what you would do. So that's how, when these guys would be lying to you, abuse you in some way, then you do this quote audit. I love that. I'll work the lot myself. And then you knew.
Yeah. But then I turned it into a creative situation. I mean, a competitive scenario where I would have 3 or 4 people vying for that one lot or that shift. And I would let them almost bid on it and say, I'll just take the highest offer for Friday night at lot B.
Okay.
Jim, Bob, Susan, whoever wants to pay the most for that Friday night shift, make an offer and it can be yours.
Were all these people coming out of, these are people that you knew from Georgia State?
Georgia State, people from Lassiter, people, friends of friends. I never had to run an ad because I would just say, hey, Charlie, you got any buddies that want to work? You want to park cars? And they'd say, yeah. Yeah,
well, how about the other side of this thing? So then you get these guys, you don't know if they can drive or they can't drive. They all got driver's license, but you don't know what you got, right? And what about like people that would back cars into other cars, or those kind of those situations that you had? Because I'm sure at some of these Buckhead restaurants there was some pretty fancy cars.
There was, yeah. Yeah, claims became an expense. I mean, that was part of the business. It was just a line item, claims.
Do you remember when that first sort of showed itself?
Yeah, because I did it. I
What did you do? Do you remember the first one?
One of the classic was, and it's my only one, thank goodness. But I would pull out of the space too quick, turn too quick, pulling out of the space, and hit the driver's side or the passenger door down the front bumper of the other car. So because you back, so you
cut it too close. You're saying? Just
as you're pulling out, you gotta just turn too fast because we back every car in. And
so what happened then? How'd you deal with that? Because as soon as it happened, I know you went, "Oh no!" Right?
Oh no!
Right? I'm 18 years old.
Customer is.
Do you remember what kind of car it was?
I don't remember. I wish I did. I'm sure it was a BMW or it has to be. It always is,
All right. Yeah. All right. So you have the guy, so you're waiting for this guy to show up, right? Oh no, he's there. He went to get the car.
Yeah. I had to pull it up and I had to wait for the other car because there's two cars in it. So, but that guy had to pull up the car and explain what I did. And of course I had to pay for it and pay for a rental car. And it's not fun.
So you didn't have insurance?
I did have insurance. I have garage liability and I had general liability, but garage liability is the wrecking of cars liability. And, we had a $500 deductible at the time and we would move that deductible up through the years. But
how did you know to get that?
The landlord that gave me the lot required it. I mean, he knew that.
Oh, he knew. Okay.
Yeah. And said, you got to have to go get this type of insurance. So I went and shopped it and found it. And
well, how do you know and shop and find, you're 18 years? I keep going back, Dan. I'm putting it into perspective here. You're 18 years old. You
don't have Google.
You realize you're not going to be a professional football player. You don't really have your dad to help you here. Okay. So this guy says you want to rent the lot for $500 a month. And you say, yeah, that's great. Whatever that is. And then he tells you to go get insurance. It's not like you've been in business forever and you know to call Larry Powell and ask him for advice. What do you do?
What's funny is the parking lot that I worked in, it was almost the same people every night. There was regulars going to Otto's and Peachtree Cafe. And I got to know the people coming there very well, because I was there every night. Everybody who come in, I would introduce myself and say hello and try to know who my customers were. And I knew some were lawyers. I knew some were accountants. I knew some were this, and I would just say, hey, I need help. You're a lawyer. I need a lawyer. I need help, and they would direct me to someone if it wasn't them. And, so I had all my resources were right there. I just had to figure out who they were. And everybody was so kind to me because, I was a kid starting a business. Everybody was kind of rooting for me and wanted me to be successful. And, so I had like this quasi advisory board of my customers parking cars. So
were you always that kind of a kid that would always ask for help? I mean, that's there's a lot of people that don't do that. Even to this day, I'm sure you've hired a lot of people in your lifetime that just say, no, I know, I'll get it. Right. But where did you was that just part of who you were? Were you always that way?
I guess I was. I've never had that question asked of me, but I guess I'm never afraid to ask for help for sure. I mean, I love helping people. I mean, if there's something I can teach someone, I think it's fun, but Sure. I guess I do ask for help. I hope I don't ask for too much help, but
Well, I think that that's one of the
yeah,
I
it's a
think
good
that's one of the
point.
characteristics of a successful person
Yeah,
is the
you've made a
ability to
great
be
point.
humble
I've
enough to
never
say, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great. I've never thought of that, to be honest with you. I mean, that's a great point. I would
All right.
ask for help.
So as this thing starts coming together, you start learning the ropes. So you know how to get the insurance, you know how to cut a deal with the restaurant guy. You get another one, and now you've got to understand how to deal with employees and how not to get ripped off. You come up with this idea, hey, I'll just sublease on a daily basis, right? That
Yeah,
particular lot, whatever it is, so that I know that I've got a number. And if they do better than that, good for them.
good for
And
them.
if
Yeah,
they don't, then they overbid for the particular lot, and bad for them, you know?
right.
They worked for nothing in effect. Okay. So how did the business go from there? So now you got two lots.
It was just kind of a heads down scenario. Is the best way I can describe it. I would, like I said, I was going to Georgia State, but I was getting more and more difficult as I grew. But I would wake up, I would look for other opportunities, if it was other restaurants or other nightclubs or other parking lots that served office buildings. And I learned how to go down to the Fulton County Courthouse and pull up property records of who owned properties. And I would
Wait a
sit,
second. Wait a second. Who taught you that?
I don't remember who taught me that one,
Come
but
on. Was it was it one of the car,
it
one
had
of
to
the
be one
car
of the
owners
real
probably?
estate guy that would pull in my lot. And I would say, you know, how do I find out who the owner of this property is? And now you can just Google it, but back then you had to go to the actual courthouse, the records,
Right.
pull up and physically look who it is, and then try to find them and contact them. And I would find them and contact them,
Well, wait a
and I would
second. You
just
were working with, I'm a little confused. You were working with restaurants.
yeah. Well, then it wouldn't be that wouldn't be the hard ones. Restaurants are easy. You can call the GM of the restaurant, but I would go to
Yeah, but
like
if you told the GM of a restaurant, when you would call him, he'd say, yeah, we got guys that park cars. We don't have a problem.
yeah.
What was your pitch?
I'll call you next month. You're going to have a problem eventually. I saw it as a timing thing, because
So you were
eventually,
pushing your dependability.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. My dependability.
when you deal with Chip Patterson, you don't even have to ever worry about this. It's
Yeah.
just going to be taken care of.
I show up and I do what I say I'm going to do. I mean, that really was my whole thing. If I said I was going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
And that was, I think, the secret to any success I had. And it was stressful. That was hard promise, but you can ask my wife, who's been with me since the day I started. It was 24/7. I could get calls at 3 a.m, 6 a.m, 8 a.m. I was the epicenter of this promise.
Why did you decide? So if it's one thing to do, I have my own, I'm at Otto's restaurant. I have my own lot and I'm doing my own thing and I'm making 50 grand a year, right? Okay. At 18 years old in 1986, after making $3 and 65 cents an hour.
Yeah, something like
So
that.
you're
Yeah.
richer than you ever
Oh,
thought you would ever be in your entire life.
yeah, it was
Yet,
hilarious.
this next deal comes up and you start dealing with these problems on the first time you tried to scale, meaning the guy's ripping you off or he's lying to you or whatever, and you
Yeah.
finally kind of figured that out. Why did you continue to want to expand and grow? Why weren't you happy saying, hey, I'm making 80 grand a year now and I'm working one parking lot and I got a parking lot? Why expand?
It was fun. I don't know. I just loved it. In a way, I always felt like it replaced football for me. I was competitive and I wanted
Okay.
to, our saying, I'm trying to think of our value statement was winning through service, and I always, that's what
Where'd
was
that
on our
come
website.
from?
We sat around in a room and kicked it around forever and tried to
Who's
figure out.
we? You and your
Well,
girlfriend?
once we got bigger, as a management team, and
Management teams. We're not even close to
I'm
that
way
yet.
ahead of you. That's way down the road.
Yeah, man, you got to give me a break here. I'm just trying to figure out because there'll be people watching this saying, and then what did he do, right? So the third piece is you say, I got two restaurants. I'm going to go to another restaurant guy.
I literally did that for the next 10 years. Go to the next restaurant. The next.
That's what you did.
I just added one at a time, as many as I could, and brought people in. So I was a junior now in college. I had over 200 parking attendants working for me. So now I'm 19 or 20.
What a goat rodeo.
I've got 40 or 50 parking lots. I can't remember. I couldn't go to college anymore. I couldn't even go to class. It was, it was just too much. So I ended up dropping out of Georgia State. I'm a junior at Georgia State.
With 200 parking attendants working for you in 50 different lots.
Yes.
Holy crap.
And it was.
How much money were you making? Do you remember?
I would guess at that point we were probably doing 4 or 5 million a year.
Oh my God.
But I mean, the whole time for me, I was like, just felt like I was the luckiest person in the world. This was just amazing, that I was just, this was happening,
When you were doing 4 or 5 million a year, now you have to, did that include, was that just all yours, the 4 or 5 million a year?
No, that's kind of gross revenue. So every parking fee I'd pull in, and I'd pay leases and pay insurance out of that and pay, so I would call that top line revenue of parking.
Top line revenue at the end of it in junior year in college, okay, with 200 parking attendants and 50 lots. What was your sort of monthly take home?
It's a good question because, I ended up, just reinvesting a lot in the business, hiring the people I needed to perform and to
you didn't keep the same formula that you had before, which was, pay me so much money for this lot, for this particular lot?
It just took more, I had to hire an HR director, and I had to hire a payroll director, and then I hired a risk manager, and then I hired operational, regional operational. Then I had, I put in. Who
did you go to? So you're 20, 21 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you go to? You don't know anything. Who are you going to? You were like me. We were raised by a father who really didn't know business, really, right? So it wasn't like something that was going on a long time around our dinner plans and everything. So what do you do? I mean, what do you mean an HR director? You never even knew what that was.
Okay? I know. I had no clue.
If you didn't know what a lease was, I guarantee you 3 years later, you didn't know what an HR director was. So
I did 3 years later. When you start hiring people, I started figuring that out. But probably the next educational part for me was I joined a YEO group. Which is Young Entrepreneurs Organization. It's different than YPO. It's a sister organization to YPO. So I was in YEO about that time. And
at 21 years old, you mean?
Yeah, it's probably 20, 21. And I was in a group.
Which one of your BMW clients actually told you to do that?
That's a great, I don't know how I figured that one out. I can't remember, but it was probably one of the best things I did because I had 2 people in my group that went public that year. I had incredible business owners that were in their 30s, 40s, 50s. 2 of them went public, and I got to sit around with them and ask them any question I wanted, and they were fantastic.
These were clients of yours, the people that you parked at cars?
No, this is now a YEO group. So
this is the YEO group had this. Okay.
So like the owner of Radiant Systems that started in Atlanta, it was in my group. I know him. Yeah, the Gorin brothers were in my group. So I got to sit around with those guys and ask,
they were smart guys. I met them when they got started.
Really smart guys. Yeah. So we probably had 5 or 6 of those type men and women in my group that I was able to every month go, now what do I do? And the one thing I learned from them was hire people that are smarter than you, which is not hard to do, and put them in the positions you need and just do what you do, and that's.
How are these, when the people that you were hiring, you're 21 years old, you don't have a college degree, you make an amazing amount of money. You've got a lot of moving parts with 200 parking attendants, okay, and 50 different lots and restaurant owners and all of these same, like you said, this clientele that you had probably went to all of these different restaurants.
Yeah.
How old were the people that you were hiring back then?
The professional people were my age, they're A little older. I mean, most of them are college graduates or, 20, 21, 22. My parking tenants are all 18, 19.
I get that, but what about the guys that, when you talk about the HR director and all this,
Yeah.
I mean, you need
They were,
people that had some experience, not somebody that went to a 4-year degree and really didn't know anything.
that's kind of what I ended up with, though, because I'd hire a lot of my own guys that would graduate college that park cars with me and come back. And when they would graduate, I would hire them. So
You'd
we
make
did a
them,
lot of,
they'd go from parking attendant to executive.
yeah. So my HR director was a guy that parked cars for me, graduated Georgia State with an HR degree. I hired him. I even sent him back to get his master's in HR, and
you paid for it?
Paid for it. And he stayed with me to the very end. And
that's incredible.
We may end up doing it again. I don't know.
So now you start getting some infrastructure in place so that you're not doing it all.
Right.
And then what happened? When did you start getting to where you say, all right, so I stopped calling restaurants. Now I need to continue to expand. Was that when you started going to the for county records for who owned the parking lots and all that stuff?
I was doing that the whole time. So, I pretty much did business development. I figured out that's kind of what I was good at, is trying to build a business and then hire, the right team, put the team together. And, but I think the big break for me was Simon Properties. We did Lenox Square and Phipps Plaza here in Atlanta. Simon Properties has 285 malls around the country at this time. And they decided to consolidate all their parking into one operator. So they did a national RFP for, I think, 5 or 6 parking companies got the bid on it, and we won it.
So you had the contract locally,
right,
for Lenox and Phipps?
Lenox and Phipps, yeah.
And then because you had done business with them, you got the request for proposal.
That's right.
And how old were you then?
So that was a big fast forward. That was probably in 2000.
Oh, that's a big fast forward. You're talking 14 years later.
Yeah, probably. That's probably right.
What did you look like? Tell me this. What did you look like? What was the name of your operation, your company?
It was called AmeriPark. Just AmeriPark, one word.
And where'd you come up with that?
Now they're sitting around with the team and, figuring out. We started as Atlanta Valet Parking, and we realized quickly, like, if we're going to get out of Atlanta and go work in other cities, we got to get rid of the name Atlanta. I'm not good at naming companies, by the way.
How come you didn't say we're worldwide parking?
AmeriPark is what we came up with, which kind of
all right. Well, you limited yourself there.
Yeah.
So you have AmeriPark. What did you look like 5 years? So 1991, then say 1996, and then here you are in 2000. So I'm just wondering what did those stops look like?
Yeah. We did expand to Charlotte and Birmingham during those years. And so we did have.
Where was the first city you expanded to?
Charlotte. We were asked to operate something up there. I can't remember what it was, but
so one of your local guys also had a property up there? And
that's right.
Would you do it?
And so would we do it? And so we took one of our guys from the team and said, this is going to be your market. You're now the Charlotte market manager.
And that's a pretty cool thing to do, because you're dealing with guys that are all young. They're not married. They have no kids, right? It was like, oh yeah, I'll go to Charlotte, right?
That's right. Well, a lot of them are lifetime valet parking guys like me. They're, aren't going to go to college. Maybe they went to 2 years of college. Maybe they were in the military, or, they just weren't made for college. And this was a career path now for them, that they could go and have their own market, or have a little, I'd break the accounts up to about 20 accounts each and give them to a manager to manage. So there would be a regional type manager, or
So that was the ratio. So the regional manager, he was the 20-to-1 guy?
20-to-1 guy.
Okay,
and he would be salaried.
He did what basically you did here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
He would have 20 different lots.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he would rent the lots out on a nightly basis. He followed your formula.
That's right. And I could reduce my reporting structure down to 5 or 6 people at that time, operationally.
Those guys, so everybody, when you started out, everything was variable. right? I mean, your fixed cost was the leases on the lots. Then what you did is you didn't have full-time employees. You just had these guys working for you,
Some
that
were
were
full
parking
time, some were
cars,
part time. Yeah.
right? And
But
then you weren't paying them hourly wage. You were paying them they were like independent contractors because they were leasing the lot for $100 a night. And then
right.
they were doing whatever they could make.
That's right.
Right. All
That's
right.
right.
So when did it ever move from that? Did everybody just continue on as an independent contractor that was parking cars?
No, we figured out that we really needed to start treating them as employees because we would test it against the different state standards. So if you're telling them when to be at work, what to wear, are we training them? They really looked more like employees, and so we made an effort to switch everybody into employee status. So we were able to pay a tip wage, which was good, and
so what was the tip wage back then in the early 90s? Was it $1.60 an hour or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was like $1. In every state was different, but it was anywhere from $1.85 to $2.21 or
right.
$2.35. I can't remember. It's in that range, right?
But would you still lease them? Would they still when a guy was an employee, you wouldn't lease him the lot?
That's right. So we had to go back to more of a accountability system of saying, let's count the cars and do it the more manual way. So
now you were faced again with this, they could rip you off.
That's right.
Through miscounts or whatever they did so that they could skim off the top in effect. How did you solve the problem there?
We still use that same kind of methods where we'd say, look, we have 5 years of data on this parking lot for this day, this event, this July, whatever it was. And this kind of the expectation of what we think we'll do. And if we don't hit it, then we'll bring in an audit. We'll just bring in an audit team and we'll figure out what's going on. Because either something's wrong, we're doing something wrong, the service is bad, or you're stealing. It's one or the other, So what
happened is the word had gotten out within the organization that they kind of know what they're doing. And if you want to stay here short term, you should skim. But if you want a long-term position here, you should be honest.
That's right.
That's kind of what the word on the street became within AmeriPark.
That's right. I think that's right. And it was also kind of self-managed because most of the lots had several, you and I are working together on a lot, Charlie. And if you decide to skim, you got to kind of bring me into the game, right? Because I'm going to find out. So you kind of get, when there's 6, 7, 8 people on a parking lot, they kind of self-manage each other too. If you got a bad apple, they figure it out. And because they're figuring if you're going to do that, you're probably skimming the tips from me too, because they would pool the tips.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
So if you're willing to steal from him, you're probably willing to steal from me too. So they kind of would weed out those guys,
Did they actually did the guys that were in the parking lot, if there was 5 of us and one of them was doing that, did all of a sudden that guy just get told to go away by the other 4 guys?
That's right.
He didn't even finish a night out, probably, right?
I didn't finish a night. That's right.
So I want to go back to this where you actually looked at the records at the courthouse. You were looking for records that were the owner of what? Because you were in the restaurant and bar business, then you went into, what was that whole segment of the business?
Well, so think of it this way. So Buckhead, when there would be 10 bars on a street, right? And then there's a bank, and then there's an office building, and then there's, a shoe store, and these parking lots would just sit there and people would park in them for free.
Yeah.
And go out to the bars and restaurants. And I would go find out who owned that parking lot and say, I will pay you $500 a month and I'll lease your parking lot and I'll clean it the next morning because everybody parking there throws all their trash out in the car and they leave. And that was that was the other model of just going to lease parking lots. And one model was going to a restaurant if they had their own parking lot and they would just pay me to park the cars. So I could do either or. But a lot of it
guys, like you said, so if a bank owned the parking lot, this was an opportunity for them to make a couple of $1,000s a week on a parking lot that was just sitting there empty.
Just sitting there. Yeah.
So that must have been a pretty easy pitch.
It was a very easy pitch, Plus, they had a problem, a trash problem, like I said. So I came in with, how about some money and I clean your parking lot? Like, where do I sign? But I had to get to the right person though. So that was always
Who was the right person?
I found that the landowner was the right person. Even if it was leased by the bank, the landowner was the right person. And if they had a lease that said, oh, well, they have the rights to the parking lot 24/7, I'll introduce you to the bank, but I would always go to the property owner first. And so I've met a lot of property owners in the city. I knew every big property owner in the city because I'd call them all the time and talk to them. I became friends with some really big time guys that, owned all the land. And it was kind of funny, the 20-year-old kid calling, one of the, how I ran into Charlie Loudermilk, who owned Aaron Rents. They owned a parking lot, and I ended up calling Charlie Loudermilk. I didn't know who he was, and they had me have a meeting with him. So now I'm sitting in the office with Charlie Loudermilk.
How old were you then?
I was 20. He had a little parking lot on North Fulton Drive. I mean, it's like those are the guys I got to meet and hang out with, though. So I was able to pick up the phone and call Charlie. Or
how did when you met those guys, here you are, such a young man, who obviously had great ambitions and was very competitive. And like you said, you had what was the motto that you guys had that came later?
Winning through service.
Winning through service. And they came up with that because that's who you are, heart of hearts.
Yeah.
So when you got in front of these very successful real estate people, how did they treat you?
They treated me like I was their kid. I was like family. They were rooting for me. They were helping me. Everybody treated me great.
Yeah. They wanted you to succeed. I find that too when I get younger people come to me that have that kind of ambition, not just to talk about it, but they're actually doing it.
Right.
I want to do everything that I can to help them and accelerate it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's like,
you get to share it.
Break, man, because I was there one time, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I had some really big time people help me. It was fun. It was neat. And I'm pinching myself the whole way. Like, I can't believe I get to do this, Do
you remember when you were, let's go, if you take it out 10 years, okay, so you go from 86 to 96.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember back how many lots or properties you were dealing with, how many employees, and what kind of revenue you had maybe at the end of the 10 years? How many different cities maybe even,
Well, I didn't end up selling till 2015. So this keeps going till 2015.
I'm just trying to say, give me a 10-year snapshot. The 1 year or the 1 day snapshot was Chip at 18 years old parking cars for Otto. Okay.
Yeah. I think the most amazing time was when I kind of looked up, and when I say looked up, like literally looked up and started counting the chickens. Because I just wasn't a counter. I just kept going and going, adding lots, deposit money. I wasn't taking a big salary. I wasn't taking distributions. I was just going. And I think around that time, I realized we were doing like $28 million or something. I was like, how in the world are we doing? Is this right? How could this be right? We're doing this much revenue.
Yeah.
And
did you get to a point that you were actually buying properties, or were you always just leasing properties?
I was able to buy a few properties. They're hard to buy. A parking lot is hard to buy because most parking lots are, owned by savvy real estate, usually generational families from Atlanta, like the Seeligs or the Carloses, or, that owned a lot of land. Their fathers and their fathers bought, and it's just in a holding pattern until they're going to develop it into something,
Right.
So most of my parking lots right now are the Lowe's Hotel in the middle of Peachtree Street, or, they were all just in holding pattern. So you couldn't buy them.
So it's really hard. That makes a lot of sense. Why would I sell something that ultimately I'm going to add great value to by developing it. In the meantime, I could be making money on it, right? Which
Right.
far out, I could pay all the property tax. It's not a problem. I could do that in a couple of nights rental.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it was, it was hard. I was able to buy a few properties along the way, that stuff that got what was in distressed from the banks a couple times, and we were able to buy those, but it's very rare. If I could buy them and I could break even with the parking revenues, I'd buy them. For sure.
So how many, do you remember when you were at that 28 million, do you remember how many people that you actually, and what's really interesting about me, about you, is you're saying I wasn't really counting it, and I find this true to be of entrepreneurs like yourself that are true business developers. It's just a matter of just continuing to grow the business.
Yeah.
Like what happens behind them, they're not really paying attention to. It's
Doesn't
all
matter.
that's happening today in front of them, right?
It didn't matter. I didn't change my lifestyle. I had $100 in my pocket. I had my car. I was happy. This was
You didn't
fun.
change
It
your
wasn't for the
lifestyle?
money. That's somewhat. I got a better apartment, and then I got married and bought a house, but we didn't live crazy. And I always drove like a pickup truck or something. I didn't really.
Why is that?
Well, one is I realized
you must have, when
quickly.
you were dealing with like the Gorin brothers or the YEA guys, here they are all building businesses, making more money, selling businesses, becoming multimillionaires. Wasn't there this peer pressure on you to say, no, why don't you buy yourself a new Corvette, or why are you living there? Why don't you buy a house, name the place, or how come you didn't succumb to that kind of pressure? Because I know that peer pressure was there.
No, I did twice. So that year when I made $50,000, when I was 18, I was peer pressured at that point. I couldn't believe I had this money. I think I spent $75,000 that year, thinking I was like I signed a football contract. I was 18. I bought a BMW, and I had it for about a year, and it just didn't feel right. So I went back, and I bought a white minivan because we used it to shuttle people. So
tell me, this is interesting because I had a lot of the same experience on that. In other words, that wasn't why didn't it just not feel right?
I just felt, I don't know. I don't know why, because I did it again when I sold something in 08 or 07 or something, and I bought a Porsche because I loved Porsche 911s my whole life. I thought they were cool. And I thought, this is my dream car. I bought a Porsche 911. It sat in my garage. I drove it 3 or 4 times. I felt stupid driving it. I felt flashy, and I just felt out of place. And I just and I also didn't want my team to think I was making a bunch of money and making it off their backs. And here I've got this fancy car and go park cars. And I didn't want my clients to think I was making a ton of money because, my rent would go up, so I started, it wasn't right.
Part of what we do there, Chip, though, is there's no easy way to discover who you really are.
Yeah.
Right. So people tell us who we need to be because of the money that we're making or the success that we're enjoying. And then what we do is we start to become the people that they expect us to be, only to find out we're just not comfortable being that person.
Right.
So what do I do now? And I think that this might happen to athletes, for example, in a big way, right? That they come from very humble backgrounds, and then they start hanging around with a fast crowd. And before you know it, they're spending this money. I still remember I was running a company for that had European operations. And one of the guys told me that it was reporting to me in London. I was probably 35 years old, 34, 35 years old. And he told me, he says, you're going to be going over to see your operation in Paris. You need to go to this restaurant. And remember, you need to order this Sauternes wine, okay, which is really special. And you and Kathy will be there. You'll really enjoy it. And I went to this restaurant, which is a very expensive restaurant in the Tuileries. And then I went and ordered this bottle of wine. And that bottle of wine was, back then, would have been probably 1988.
Yeah.
A bottle of wine was $600.
Oh.
To this day, I still remember I didn't enjoy one sip of that
No,
wine because I felt like, what did I just do?
I'm
What
exactly the same.
what
I could never buy a bottle of wine today for that price. I
But
would
I
be,
think that was part of me learning who I am
yeah,
versus who people told me I should be based on what my title was or what I was making. I think it's very difficult, especially at a young age like you, when you really you're surrounded by people who are also making that kind of money, and they're saying, "No, Chip, get a Porsche. No, Chip, get this. No, Chip, do this. No, Chip, let's go on a private plane to wherever." And you're like,
right.
that ain't me. That ain't me. That's hard to do. It's hard to push against the tide.
It is. It is. And then, but it's also something I've had to, really push myself on the generosity side too, because, what's one thing I've learned in my group with Ron and these guys, that I have sort of a scarcity complex too. I'm afraid you're going to lose it all. So you have to
And
make
where was this? Where did the scarcity come in?
We talk about it in the group, my men's group I was telling you about with Rick Jackson,
Oh,
Ron
you
Blue,
do? Okay.
guys, and they, in the terms of generosity and giving, you've got to kind of get out of that mode too and say, oh, I don't mind giving away a crazy amount of money that
Right.
you couldn't believe you're giving this money away, and I've had to really push myself on that as well. So that's
So
because I have the scarcity.
these guys showed you to kind of sort of trust God in effect,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That it really wasn't Chip that got Chip to where Chip is. When did that come about? Did you ever come to that realization, or was it Chip who got Chip to where he is? Or was it God who got you there? How did it all happen? How do you look back?
I kind of left out a part of my story in the very beginning when I first started parking cars before I owned my company. Okay. I parked cars for that few months before. And my first shift I ever parked cars, and this is true story, and sometimes I cry when I tell the story, but I would.
You cry all you want. I'm going to hear the story. I want the story. Okay.
I have a hard time telling this, but it's when I realized.
Take a deep breath. You're good. Here, I'll take a sip of water for you.
All right. So I was parking the cars. It was a Sunday night. It was the first night I've ever parked cars. I think I got the worst shift is what it was, because no one goes on Sunday night. It was raining. It was cold. And I was sitting in a parking hut. And a guy was walking by me on the sidewalk with a cart full of cans. A homeless man was walking by me. And I parked one car, and I had $5 in my pocket, and he was walking by me. I'd never seen a homeless man. I grew up out in Marietta, out in the country. We don't have homeless people out here. And he's walking by, and I'm like, goodness gracious, that guy, that's awful. And I'm like, God, I should give him this $5. I should give it to him. He just kept walking. I kept staring at him because the way I was sitting, I could watch him. He was going down Peachtree Street, and I was just watching him. And I'm struggling. Finally, I'm like, screw it. And I run down there, and I give him my $5. I come back, and that was it.
Why is it such an emotional moment for you?
I guess because that's when I knew when my company started, that was the reason.
Huh. The reason, so the reason was?
It was that struggle to give everything away. My father had just died. I had nothing.
And you gave your last $5 from that night away, or your gross income from that night.
Yeah.
The $5.
And
How
I
did
didn't know
that
if
carry? Now let's carry that forward as you started building this business. Did these parking lots in a lot of cases are in communities where there are homeless people?
oh yeah, a
Okay,
lot of
so
them.
how did that experience kind of weave its way through AmeriPark?
Yeah. So I ended up seeing that guy every night now.
What was his name?
I called him the Walker. I didn't know his name. I had nicknames for all of the homeless guys because I
Oh,
didn't
you
know him.
did? Okay.
Sometimes some couldn't talk, but he became one of my friends. I'd see him every night. And, as I made more money, I give him more money. And then I had another guy that was, he was deaf and he couldn't talk, but he had a wooden leg and we called him the Limper. And Limper worked with us. And so it would be comical. At some points, I'd be sitting in my chair at the parking lot and I'd have 3 homeless guys sitting with me, just hanging out with me. But they're my friends, and they would help me clean parking lots and they'd help me do security. Like they would help me, whatever I needed, they were there and I'd pay them. And when it was
You say
cold,
that they would be hanging out with you and they'd be your friends. Most people see homeless and they're just repugnant, right? I mean, it's like, man, I don't want to go close. I'll give the guy some money, right? And then I hope he just goes away.
yeah,
Why
this
would
was
you?
their
I mean,
area.
how do you explain that you befriended these people and sat with them and talked with them? What did you learn about them when they sat and talked with you?
That they were just great people. I loved them. They were awesome. They were my friends.
Oh my gosh.
And, I helped them as much as I could, but, I couldn't change their lives. They were there in the street. They lived in that area. It's wherever, under a home or in a closet or wherever they could find space. And they would.
What did you learn about homelessness back then by hanging out with these guys?
I think with these guys is that I guess I knew is that they weren't, I don't know what I learned except that I trusted them.
Like, what did you learn about their circumstances? Like, I mean, that's one of the questions that always comes up is, why is this guy?
Yeah. I see,
why is the walker and why is the limper? Why are they homeless? Like, what's the deal?
I think in both those cases, the one with, they had some sort of mental or physical defect or both that just kind of kept them from society, being deaf and not being able to walk. And because he's deaf, he couldn't talk right. And, you couldn't understand what he was saying. So you just kind of communicated the best you could. So he probably had a hard time in life. And they're all African-American. So, they were already at a disadvantage. But then, the walker didn't talk at all. He didn't talk. He would you just kind of point and, you do the best you could. And
so why did you love
the guy was alcoholic.
Why did you love these men?
I don't know. I mean, I knew that day when I gave him that $1, something happened. When I gave him my $5, something happened. I could feel something happened. And then when I started my business, I always knew it was like an angel or it was a test. And
did you grow up having any religious background? When you
I
talk
grew
about
up,
things like
I grew up Catholic. I was my mom was a strict Catholic. We were altar boys and, communion every week and confessional every week and doing our Hail Marys and our Fathers. But I found myself straying away from that when my father died. I kind of was angry for a while, So I went through all that. And then when I got married, my wife was Methodist and they wouldn't marry us in the Catholic Church unless she converted. And she didn't want to convert. And so we ended up Methodist.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of where we are today. So, you know,
Did your faith have anything to do with do you connect your faith with the reaction and the relationship that you built with these homeless men? Or are they
not in the beginning,
okay?
unless faith was just growing up Catholic, that was in my character.
Yeah,
You know, I wouldn't call it faith as much as that's how you were brought up, you know,
right. It was part of who you were, right? Yeah.
or who you were, you know, help everybody.
Catholics are all about serving the poor and serving others. We always had the Mother Teresa stories, right, and all that, right? We kind of grew up with those things.
That's right.
The stories of the saints and the martyrs and sacrifices and all that. That was part of our upbringing.
That's right. So I think that was just part of it. I didn't connect faith to it, but I did come to faith when that moment almost, like I was like, I can't explain it, but you know, something happened. I felt different.
But the way you talk about it, it's almost like it was a supernatural event that happened. Chasing that guy, going through that test and then chasing him down and giving that $5 because it obviously had an enormous impact on you for you to have such trouble telling that story.
Yeah, it was. It was.
So what happened? So you said the next big thing that happened in the business was when you answered that RFP.
Yeah.
What happened?
So we won it. And in 6 months, I had to be in 25 different cities.
In 6 months?
LA, Las Vegas, San Francisco, New York, Miami. Yeah, every 25 big MSAs, they said I either had 3 to 5 or 6 new parking deals, big parking deals like Caesar's Palace, and say, you got to get these open in 6 months. And I grabbed all my lieutenants and said, Josh, you're California. Billy, you're Texas. You're Northern California. You're Florida. You're Miami.
What happened?
Let's go. And take off, get out of here and start hiring.
And so these are all like you're talking about, these are all 20-something people.
20-something, like lot managers, guys that's running the Cheesecake Factory in Buckhead. I said, you are now taking over California. Yes, sir.
I'm laughing because it sounds ridiculous. Okay.
But it's parking cars. You know, we're not blasting rockets in this space. So, you know, all you had to do is get out there and hire and get uniforms and signs and get in the POS systems. And, you know, we were doing a lot of the back office stuff by that time, getting the insurance in place and payroll set up. And
but he had to go to California and he had to figure out what these locations look like. He had to hire people. He had to do interviews. He had to monitor them and manage them. He had to train them. He had to do all that stuff, right?
That's
This
right.
is the guy that was doing the Cheesecake Factory in Buckhead.
He just had to scale what he was doing. You know, he's doing it on a one level.
It's just easy. I get it.
So we did it.
Do you remember what you paid the guy? Because here he is making what is $50,000 a year doing the Cheesecake Factory.
I think
And
we
then
probably
you say, yeah, you need to go to California and work this out.
probably 75, 80,000 plus a percentage of the profit on the market. And, you know, but that guy ended up making 250,000 a year, you know. I mean,
How old was he when he went to California?
he was probably 25, 26.
Jeez, that's incredible.
You know, but that story's, there's 20 of those. You
must have been brilliant at selecting people.
It's so funny you said that because we didn't call it hiring. We called it selecting.
Oh, okay.
That was our term. It's funny you said that because we did select people.
Where did that term come from? Why did you think of it that way?
Because we created a criteria of what we wanted in somebody. And what we did is we took myself and, 10 of our original guys, and we did a personality test from Dr. Helms. And
who's he, behavioral psychologist guy?
Yeah. And we created a test out of it. Before that, nowadays there's a million of them, but we created our own based on our own people. and it came out to people that are safe, humble. I forget what all the characteristics were, but you had to be a servant, right? You were a servant first. And when we could figure out if you were a servant, a true servant, then you would fit our model, So we were just out finding servants, and it worked.
Well, they had to have, they had to be competitive. They had to be ambitious.
Yeah.
Okay. Yet they had to be humble. Okay. If they were truly going to be a servant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite a combination of things for it to actually work.
Yeah. They're all underdogs.
And they had to be trustworthy, right?
Trustworthy.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't always work out, but you're hoping for that.
So that's when you hired guys, did they have to take the test, the behavioral psychology test, and then you had to match to the profile?
That's right. And we would get a green, yellow, or red on you.
From Dr. Helms?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got a green, you were, red didn't mean you were a bad person. Just mean you weren't, you weren't humble and you weren't ready to serve.
You weren't a fit for our business is really what it comes down to. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you would know when you hired a yellow, probably within a first couple of weeks, whether this person was going to be a fit or not, right?
Absolutely.
You just know.
Yeah.
How long, as you grew this business, now that it's grown at that size, and you're national as AmeriPark, I love that you had to come up with that name, is how far did you feel like you sort of lost touch with the actual serving the customer, if you will? I mean, you started at autos, okay? Yeah. So go from there to where you are now nationally. How far away did you get from that? Did you turn into this sort of high rolling, big money, young president's organization from YEA to young president's organization, superstar, did that happen to you?
No, I don't think so at all, because, I don't know how to explain it. There wasn't a high level to us. So all we did is park cars. So, our business was in the parking lot. And when we would go visit other cities, we hang out in the parking lots. When we park cars, I like parking cars. It's fun.
So you would actually go visit, you'd go to some of these lots like a Caesar's Palace, and you would actually park a couple of cars as you were hanging with the guys?
Absolutely, yeah. Greek ticket people, move cars up. My wife will tell you, she hated going to any restaurants or anything that we worked at, like go eat there, because I can't sit. We used to do the Houstons at Wildwood, and we'd eat there all the time. And I could see when the cars started getting backed up, and I'd say, "I'll be right back." And I'd get up for dinner, get them caught up, and come back to dinner. And then I'd look out the window again. They're backed up again. And I would run back up. And so my wife's just like, "Can we just go eat somewhere that we don't have a parking lot at, just so we can relax?"
So you never, ever changed from that chip at 18 years old?
I don't know. I'm sure I changed some. I mean, hard not to change everything, No, but I mean, as the business, I'm not saying that now at your age, but I'm saying as you were building the business, you never left. Look, I'm a parking attendant. I park cars, and we do a great job at that. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm very proud of the way that I park cars. You never kind of left that. You never became the executive that spoke about, I used to park those cars way back when and all that. You never had that. You're still parking cars even when things went nationally.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, because at the end of the day, that was our product. And, I never wanted to lose a customer or a client. I didn't want to lose one ever. And I don't think we ever did lose a client, based on service. We might have got outbid on the next RFP for a deal, but we've never got fired, because it would drive me insane, if we were doing a bad job, or if we weren't, executing on what we promised. And it would
never lost a contract.
Never lost a contract. For someone saying, you guys are not doing a good job, please leave.
You might have been underbid on the contract, but you never lost a contract.
That's right.
Okay. Did you ever get contracts back that you were underbid on? Where the guy said, hey, I got a good deal. I don't care. Maybe. I want you back.
Yeah, that happened a few times for sure. Yeah.
I would think so, given the winning. What was it? Winning
through service.
Winning through service. I just love that motto. I can't remember. I got to stick with me. That's really a cool one. So then what happened as you, with the business, it stayed the same. You continued to park cars. You had more and more and more properties, but now you had what I'll call major accounts, right? Mm-hmm. That had this plethora of properties like Simon. And so tell me what happened to the business as you got into 2005, 2010. Did you still own it then?
Yep. So this is a crazy story. So in 2007, one of my biggest competitors in the space that I was friends with said he was selling his company, and it was another parking company just like ours. And he said, and all he did was hotels. So hotels was a big part of our business. We did a bunch of front door, bellman, doorman, valets, parking attendants for hotels. And he called and said, I'm going to sell my business, but I'm just going to sell it to you. I don't want to go to market. I just want you to take it. And here's my price. And if you can pay me that price, I'll sell it to you. And I thought, I mean, this guy has a great business. He did it for 28 years, solid business. I said, okay, I'll do it. I went to the bank and borrowed 100% of that. And I was going to go out and try to get it financed differently later, but he wanted to close. So I got a bank to loan me, which I have no clue how, this money. I paid him his money.
You're talking millions.
18 million.
$18 million.
Yeah.
What year was this?
2007.
2007. So 20 years after you started. Oh, your 21st anniversary, I should say, right?
I've never bought a company.
Right.
I bought little ones here and there, but nothing like this. This guy was the same size as us. It was like bringing two big companies together.
Yeah.
Massive. I was like, okay, we did it. 2007. I think literally when I was signing the closing stuff, I looked up and there was a news thing about Bear Stearns blowing up, and the markets tanked, right?
It's a 600-point drop in 1986, October 86.
This is the 08 crash. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is 08.
Oh, this is the 08 crash. I'm off a little. Yeah.
So the 08 crash, and immediately hotel rooms, malls, airports, these are all our businesses, car counts. I missed covenants. I missed all my covenants the first month. I'm in big trouble. I can't even make my first payment to the bank on this debt. So they're trying to send us into a workout. They're putting me on the bank workout person. I don't even know what that means. So I'm all of a sudden, I've never had debt in my life. I'm going bankrupt. I've done this for my whole life, and I'm going to go bankrupt. And
now you're 38 years old at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
20 years
married,
old, right.
4 kids, the whole thing. I'm going to go home and say, honey, we're bankrupt. Lost it all. We're done. And this is another God thing. I called up another one of my competitors who had just sold his company to private equity. And I said, Jerry, he's just in the hotel space too. I said, I'm going to take my hotels and the hotel company I just bought, and I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to sell them to you. And, but you got to close quick because I'm going to go bankrupt. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He bought it.
Wow.
We made a profit. And I sold all the hotels, and I kept our other bulk business together. All our other properties stayed together. So I bailed my way out of bankruptcy. And that was probably, that whole thing happened over a 6-month period. Man, it was the most stressful thing that ever happened to me in my whole life.
I can't even imagine what that would have been like.
It was awful. But again, just praying and God delivered again, brought
Why do you
Jerry
say,
a miracle.
why you bring up, you brought this up. Now this is the second time you say, and God delivered again. So where did that all come from?
It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't happen, and I just literally prayed every night. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Help me. And, I inspiration to call this guy, and this is a miracle. The guy.
How well did you know this guy?
We had a parking association, so I would see him once a quarter, and we would talk. I mean, we were friendly competitors, but it wasn't like, my best friend. But
Was
I
it somebody
knew,
but it was somebody
he had to
obviously
grow
you
his company.
trusted.
Yeah, I trusted him for sure, and
Yeah.
I knew he had to grow his company because he had just sold to private equity. They're looking to grow the business now,
Yeah.
so this was an obvious acquisition opportunity for him. But, we were able to sell it, make a profit from the sale, and go debt free again, and go,
Man.
oh my God, how did we just?
The only thing that you did is, so you released all the hotel properties. Did you release all of the shopping center properties too?
No,
just
we
the
kept all our
hotels.
shopping centers, our airports, our everything else, parking lots, we kept. So
what percentage of the revenue did you sell off, do you think?
Half.
Okay,
Yeah.
so half the business went away, and you made some money on that. Now you got cash in your pocket.
Now I got cash and
no debt.
No debt.
Half the business. 2008. What happens then?
We just grind back down and grow it for another 7 years, and then sold everything and exited.
Who did you sell it to?
It was a group out of Germany that was buying parking companies, and it ended up being SoftBank, who ended up buying them and all the parking companies. They rolled up the whole parking industry. And
so they came to you. You weren't up for sale, in effect.
That's right. They had just bought one of our competitors, and our dog's barking.
I can't hear it. It's okay.
She can't get off the bed, so I'm going to let her off the bed and open the door.
All right. Go ahead. I'll pause. So tell me this, so you sold 7 years later. So that's 2015.
Right.
Right. So basically you were in this business for 30 years, 29 years.
29 years.
Wow. Before I get to that, I got some questions around. Take me back about these homeless people and how they weaved into the business nationally. How did all that work? Because that's part of who you are too. And you must have told that story of giving that guy that $5. If you told it to me, you must have told it 1,000 times inside the business.
No, you know what? I don't think I ever told that inside the business. I don't know. That's so weird.
Yeah.
You said that because I mean, the effect of that came out in the business because we were, this servant attitude. By the way, we're valets. We are servants, literally, but figuratively, we were servants as well. We were always looking for opportunities to serve our community as well. That was part of our whole culture, was serving, not just serving the customer, the client, but serving communities. And our people were allowed to bring in their own causes if they wanted to support them. We gave we had a block of money every month that people were able to apply for grants from the company I need a computer. Any of our employees, one guy needed new teeth, and we would vote. We had a servant board that would choose who got the grant that month. And so the whole culture was about serving on every level. But I don't think I ever tied it back to that moment to the company. It was always in me. I knew it. If that makes sense.
How did this,
I just decided to formalize it when I sold that in 2008, when I did the dodge the freight train moment. I said, I really need to formalize my serving, and asked to join more. I got more involved in the homeless efforts in Atlanta, and ended up on this Georgia Works board. And
why did you get invited to Like, I don't get invited to be on homeless boards. Okay. Why did you get invited to be on a homeless board? Something led up to that that gave you sort of a reputation that people said, this Chip Patterson guy has got a heart for the homeless. How did that come up, even in 2008 when your business was huge at that point?
Yeah. I did volunteer for when Shirley Franklin was the mayor. She started a homeless task force, and I volunteered to be on that.
Okay.
And I was put on the jobs committee for the homeless task force. So I served on that for a while. And then I really wanted to get deeper in it and roll up my sleeves. And so I asked AJ Robinson, who's the head of Central Atlanta Progress. I called him and just said, who is the smartest person in the space? Because I really want to find solutions. I don't want to just feed and Band-Aid it. Who is solving this? And he said, call this group, Georgia Works. I called the founder, and he went to lunch, and we talked about it, and he invited me on the board. So
why did you pursue that? Why did you say, I just need to know? I need to help. We need to fix this.
Yeah.
What was driving you? I mean, we all know there's a homeless problem. In fact, the homeless problem now is like overwhelming. We're seeing it all in all the major cities. My son just came back from a wedding that he attended in Las Vegas. And he said on the Strip, he said, there's homelessness all around. There's people actually, he said, I felt a little unsafe because they'd be following me and be speaking out loud, because they have, like you said, they sometimes have psychological issues, and emotional issues. So it's all over, and my son came home and said, there's a problem. And then he went back to work. You didn't do that. You said, I want to know how we can solve this. Why?
I think it goes back to that moment. I really do. I think, that's what I have to do. That's what I'm called to do.
I think that, it is interesting that I think God does break our hearts for certain segments of the population of people. And then it's a matter of, do we get past that moment of, I should give them that $5, or no, it's the last $5. It's the only money I made today, so I'm not going to do it. Right? We have that temptation moment, or that test, if you will, I guess it is. And then once you did it, your heart was broken, and that was it forever. Then, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. So does your wife have that?
I think she has it for every day, every moment of every person. She just.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah. She continues. I mean, she seeks opportunities to help everybody.
Well, what she goes with you to I forgot, what is it?
Georgia Works. Yeah.
Georgia Works. When she attends some of these functions and things, is her heart also for the homeless as yours is?
I would say no. I mean, of course, she's very, compassionate about it, but I don't think she has the same.
Right. I get it.
A lot of times I think she can feel like the way you described your son. I mean, it can get kind of edgy at times too, you're like, you get everything. You see a lot of different situations and a lot of illness.
What do you see? What do you see is like you said, I went to this one guy. I didn't want to put a Band-Aid on this thing. I want to solve the problem. Okay. So now, how did that progress from being on the board, after having sold your company? Now you join the board of Georgia Works. Then how did it progress from there that you didn't just become a Band-Aid again, just like, a lot of people are, in a lot of these nonprofits?
Yeah. Well, first the board, Bill McGann, who started it, is a pretty amazing guy. He's a business guy, and he was trying to solve a solution. The mission of the place I really thought was great. We're really ending chronic homelessness for these individuals that apply themselves to the program. Literally, they come out, they graduate, they have a full-time job, they're paying taxes, they're back with their family, they're off drugs and alcohol, they're almost completely restored. Now they can slip up and come back, but we're restoring these men over a period of 6 months to a year and solving every ill in their life that's kept them, from succeeding.
You've got a methodology that you have them follow. You must also, just like you had selection for AmeriPark? Is there a selection also for Georgia Works? Because you can't, everybody's not going to be, it's not a matter of how good of someone that is the right person coming in that we can really help.
That's
Can't
right.
help everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so you have to come in clean. You have to come in without a severe mental illness, and you have to come in. Well, those are really the big things: being clean and not being severely mentally ill, meaning you have schizophrenia or one of the really tough mental illnesses. We have to push them to another program. But if you're ready, like you have to be ready, and that's part of the intake.
What does ready look like for somebody that's homeless?
They don't want to be homeless anymore. They just gave up. They're like, I can't do this anymore. Where a lot of homeless just like being on the street, they're not coming in. That's freedom. That's their way of life. They're not going to change.
But some of those guys that were ready, they were those people that
they were that way for a while, right? Yeah. They're like, I can't do this anymore. I want to see my daughter. I want to stop doing drugs. I'm 45 years old. I can't do this anymore. I gotta figure something.
I was in AA for quite a while, and there was a famous expression there that said, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
That's it.
Okay.
That's the best way of saying it. And that's how you know. So the intake process.
How do you, as somebody who's never been homeless, how do you relate to these? Is it mostly men?
We're only men, yes.
You're only men. So how do you relate to these men?
I don't know if I do. From their point of view, they might not be relating to me. I don't know, but I just feel comfortable with them. I feel like, I do intake a lot. I just want to hear, tell me your story. And, I don't know. I just feel so at ease with them and trying to figure out, okay, let's figure out what your deal is and let's get your deal figured out. And,
what's your role now with Georgia Works?
I'm the chairman now, but I feel like I'm the director because the director and I talk 2-3 times a day. I do more with this than I do with anything. It's like, it's driving me insane. So it's like my business. I have a new idea and we're working, let's get this done. And so we're installing a huge TV in the family room right now there where I can start uploading. They just have a desire to learn. And I'm like, I can stand in front of the room and they'll ask me a million questions and they never stop asking questions like, what's a Bitcoin? All right, let me explain what a Bitcoin is, guys. So I'm going to start uploading like YouTubes and stuff, whatever question they got. I want them, we're just always coming up with something to.
You're saying that the homeless people have the questions? Is that who you're talking about?
Tons of questions.
They do. Okay.
Yeah. Like I'll go in there on Saturday and talk to them and hang out. And all they want to do is ask questions. They want to learn so much, like starting a business, they all got questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? What about the,
What's interesting is that's how we got connected. Okay. And that you said that we're thinking about starting an entrepreneur program within Georgia Works. And that's really how this discussion came about and why I invited you to be interviewed, because I just thought your story was fascinating. And I hope that the people who listen to this find it as fascinating as I did. I think you've created an incredible life, and legacy. And now look at these men that you're hanging around with. I mean, they're the who's who, and I know that they all have a heart for the Lord, but they also have such a great heart for people, and they're so generous. Okay.
Yeah.
With the net worth that they made. I remember talking to Larry Powell once on a golf course, and I said, as Christians, we're talking about giving 10%, right? A tithe to our church. And Larry Powell, I'll never forget, he told me, he said, well, I think that we need to be tithing off of our net worth. And I'm sure he told you that.
Oh, yeah.
And I went, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Yeah, like, where did that come from?
They give away more money than I'll ever make. I mean, they're going to give it all away. That's the kind of their goal. But
yeah. I read a
You know,
book
it's
recently that has had a big impact on me, and I'm still working through it. But the name of the book was "Die with Zero."
yeah,
Okay, and it's really pretty impactful, and it's not written from a Christian point of view. It's written by a hedge fund manager who's now in his early 50s, an African American guy, but he has some tremendous insights. And it does involve, a state and giving money to your kids, but also giving money away to the charities and those people that you want to support, as
that's right.
well as living a full life so that you can enjoy the money that you have, as opposed to having this scarcity concept of, oh
Yeah,
my God, I'll never have enough,
yeah, hoarding and hoarding, and
It
it's
is,
yeah,
yeah. And so the big key was moving from a life of accumulation to live a life now as this next part of your life of decumulation.
yeah, that's right.
And that's a massively different concept to
It
kind
is.
of
It's
get
hard. It's really
really,
hard,
really hard.
and
But you're
that's
hanging around with the right group.
yeah. They're pushing me. I'm like, I give what away? You know how hard it would take me to get.
I've had those moments. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's and then I read the kid that invents an app and sells it for 60 million. I'm like, it took me 30 years. He did that in 1 week.
That's right. But what
Drives
would
it.
you say? What would your last bit of advice be to somebody who, when you look back to that 18 to 21 that you were in there, somebody, because a lot of people are hearing now that I should start a business. What do you think really was some of the elements that just made you so successful so early on?
I think mine's so different that it's hard for me to apply to someone who's like drawing up a business plan because it was kind of put in my lap. But I was so grateful. I was so ambitious. I couldn't believe I wasn't going to be a car mechanic my whole life, making 25 grand a year. I wasn't a great student. I was terrible at school.
Hmm.
I never thought myself as being terribly smart, which I'm not. Honestly, you saw I can't even get the Chrome downloaded, but I just was so grateful, and I wasn't going to squander this opportunity. I don't know how to give advice except that if I just saw an opportunity and I ran as hard as I could towards it and did it with all my might. And I think if I give my kids or anybody advice, I just say what I said earlier is just do what you say you're going to do. Just do. If you say you're going to do something, if you promise something, do it. That's
Isn't
it.
that amazing?
And so many people can't do that. So if you're a painter and you're just going to be a painter your whole life or a plumber, just do what you say you're going to do, and you're going to be the most successful plumber in the world. You're going to be a millionaire
It is the
because no one
secret to
does
life.
that.
But the other piece, I'd say that's one piece that you have is just you have a real servant's heart. You're humble and you do what you say you're going to do to the point where, like you said, you can't sit in a restaurant with your wife watching the car parks getting backed up without saying, what are they doing? What
Yeah.
make this right? Move it forward. But the other thing that you've done that you take for granted and you don't, and when I asked you about it, you didn't even know where it came from, is you're not afraid to ask people for help.
Yeah, that's great. That is a great advice that you came up with because I didn't realize till you said it. That's what I do. I mean, absolutely, that is huge, and you'd be just shocked how many people want to help you.
It is, especially, and the younger you are, the more people that want to help you
That's right.
because you really just coming to them with both hands open saying, literally, I just really need help. And who doesn't want to help somebody who's just starting out in life? Who would do that? Who would say, get away from me, kid? Nobody.
Right.
Nobody. That's how it works.
That's right.
Well, thanks for your time today. This has
Yeah.
been really, really amazing. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to sign us off here, and then I'm going to close the show, and then we can talk after we end the recording. How's that?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Wow. That was Chip Patterson. So there's a man after God's own heart. I think it's just amazing what we saw from this man. And the secrets to success was simple. Just do what you say you're going to do. And when you're not sure how to do it, just ask somebody to help you. Sounds too simple, but that is the heart of entrepreneurship and the heart of a true and successful entrepreneur. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for listening to Chip. He's been a blessing to all of us. Take care. See you at the next Charlie Paparelli Show.